We all already know that RUS is an incredibly strong civilization. Most pros consider it a top 3 civilization. In my opinion, it's the best civ to climb the ladder with. If we look at China or the Holy Roman Empire, two other extremely strong civilizations, they are also more diverse and dynamic. There are so many strategies you can learn and different paths you can take during any given game to secure a win. With RUS, however, you can do exactly the same thing every single game and still end up in a strong position. That said, there are some scenarios where you'll need to adapt and do things differently. So instead of just giving you a build order, I'm going to walk you through what to do age by age and explain how to adjust your approach if things don't go your way. Let's get into it. I will explain two variations of the build. First, the ideal setup. This is what your build should look like if your enemy is letting you do whatever you want. For example, they're not making units to deny your deer or prepping for a feudal all-in. Then, I will explain what you should do if your opponent is in possession of a prefrontal cortex and decides to contest the map's deer in any way. Let's start with the ideal setup. Start off by sending all your villagers to sheep. Begin producing a villager from your town center and immediately send your scout toward your enemy's base. Then, have two of the villagers on sheep construct 2 hunting cabins, making sure their areas of influence do not overlap. When your first villager comes out, send them to the nearest straggler tree close to your sheep. Then take 4 additional villagers and send them to the same tree. These 5 villagers will chop wood only once, just enough to afford the house, and then go back to gathering from sheep. After this, set your TC rally point to sheep until you reach 12 villagers on food. While doing this, make sure to produce 2 additional scouts from your hunting cabins when you have the food available, without blocking villager production. On the other side of the map, locate the nearest deer pack to your opponent's base. Some civilizations are starting to build Dark Age barracks to push the deer. If you see this happening, use your scout to kill the deer before they can push it safely into their base. What I like to do with my other 2 scouts is send the second one through a long route, and the third one through a shorter route. This way, all 3 scouts will finish their scouting pattern at roughly the same time. Once you have 12 on food, send 1 more villager to the straggler tree that's already been chopped. By now, you will have enough resources to age up with 4 villagers. Choose the Golden Gate as your feudal age landmark, and then after starting the landmark construction, send 2 more villagers from food to the straggler tree and 1 more from the DC for a total of 4 on wood. From this point on, set your rally point to food and produce 2 more scouts from your hunting cabins when food allows. By now, 1 or 2 of your scouts should have returned. You can either send them across the map to harass exposed mining camps, or, what I prefer to do, push the closest deer pack into TC range. Since we're going for professional scouts, you don't need to push all the way into the TC, just enough so the deer can't be denied by the enemy. Build a house with a foot villager as soon as you have the wood to do so. When pushing deer, do it with 1 or 2 scouts, and keep the third scout scouting your opponent. This is extremely important because we need to know whether they're going for professional scouts themselves or building a barracks to deny our deer. As soon as you hit feudal age, sell 100 food at the Golden Gate and queue professional scouts. If done correctly, you should be researching it around 4-20 minutes. Also, queue 2 more scouts. Now, let's talk about scout deployment. The rule of thumb is to split your scouts across all deer packs. For example, I might have 2 scouts here, 2 there, and 1 heading toward the enemy's deer pack. Also, 1 additional scout could be gathering the deer within TC range. You might be tempted to use the scout that was watching for a barracks to pick up deer. Only do this if you're 100% sure you're being left alone. Otherwise, keep the scout watching the enemy movements. This will help you decide whether to reroute your other scouts and which deer pack to prioritize. Make sure you also research survival techniques by this point. As the deer start arriving, transfer villagers from sheep to deer. But remember, only 4 or 5 villagers can gather from 1 deer at a time. So don't transfer all of them if you only have 1 deer under your TC. Let's now talk about your 8 wood villagers. Always build your houses with them whenever you need. And whenever you have 175 wood, build a wooden fortress. If you expect aggression on your wood lane soon, build it with multiple villagers. If not, 1 is fine. Meanwhile, use the Golden Gate to sell any extra wood you have. And by around 710, you should have enough to age up to Castle Age with 8 villagers. The best age up for this is the High Trade House. Place it where it will gather the most passive gold. Once the landmark is completed, have 5 of those villagers gather from the deer that spawns, and send the other 3 back to the deer under your TC. At this point, set your TC rally point to wood, and leave only 6 villagers and food. You can keep the rally point on wood pretty much for the rest of the game, and just rebalance your economy by transferring wood villagers as needed. As you get enough wood, build 2 military buildings with food villagers and research your first wood upgrade. Skip wheelbarrow for now, your villagers aren't moving much yet. Now, notice I said military buildings, not specifically archery ranges. Ideally, you will want to go for horse archers. This is RUS's best Castle Age unit, but there are exceptions. Let's say, if you are getting sieged hard, building 2 barracks to defend with men-at-arms is best. Horse archers will not help you kill siege rams. If you're against Malians with javelin throwers and donzos, do not make horse archers. And if you're against an English who already has a big longbow mass, do not make horse archers. You should make use of your cerebrum. Make decisions based on your current situation. And don't always go for horse archers, even though it is the best unit. Once you reach Castle Age, you should have enough resources to immediately build a monastery and produce military buildings. Ideally, 2 horse archers. These archery ranges should be constantly producing horse archers to gain map control and secure relics. Build a house with a wood villager when needed and set your monastery's rally point to the relics. You should also have enough wood to build a blacksmith and add a 3rd archery range whenever possible. From here on, keep your horse archers alive. They're one of the best Castle Age units. Use them to kite, maintain map control, and secure relics. Use your passive gold income for blacksmiths and eco upgrades. You can also use the Golden Gate to buy stone with excess gold and build a second TC, but only do this if you're confident your opponent can't crush you for being greedy. When floating excess wood, transfer villagers to outer food sources, like the berries or the boar. If you lack map control, go for farms instead. Also, use your wood for military production. As always, adapt based on what your opponent is doing. For example, if you're going up against Ottomans with Janissaries, avoid building more horse archers and knights. Against Abbasid or Ayyubid, consider switching to infantry. In the ideal world, you want a horse archer plus knight composition in Castle Age. The landmark you choose depends on map control. If there is an important big gold or sacred site that would cripple your opponent, go for a Spasskaya tower there. Otherwise, go for the High Armory. Since Imperial Age requires a lot of gold for upgrades, transfer villagers to gold before aging up. Avoid producing knights immediately, they're very gold heavy. Instead, make horsemen for cavalry needs while saving gold for your university and elite upgrades, which are crucial in Imperial. Your ideal army composition in Imperial is Streltsy plus siege and plus some cavalry for tanking and raiding. Make Springles against melee infantry or Mangonels for ranged blobs. Also, RUS bombards are excellent. They're also cheaper and stronger even against units, thanks to the landmark upgrades. Be sure to produce at least a couple of these. Finally, don't sleep on the Imperial Age Horse Archer. It benefits from 3 different university upgrades and can be a game winner. Upgrade them if you have many left over from the Castle Age. Now, we just looked at what to do in an ideal setup, but most opponents won't let us execute our game plan uncontested. So let's take a step back. Once you reach Feudal Age and spot your enemy going for knights, immediately take every villager, except for 4, and send them to wood. Also, stop producing scouts. You won't be able to hunt deer anyway if you don't protect your villagers. Next, set up a barracks as soon as possible and start pumping out spearmen. Keep your forward scout at the enemy stable to track where the knights are headed, so you can intercept them with your spears. If you instead see your opponent is building a barracks, go for an archery range to produce a few archers. However, only do this if your opponent doesn't have a stable, otherwise your archers will get run down by a single horseman. If they do have a stable, stick to your own barracks and defend with spears. A common situation is having to defend your deer while also facing a full-on all-in. If that happens, you have a few options. If you don't have a good spot for the High Trade House, go for the Abbey of Trinity instead. This lets you produce very cheap monks that can heal your units and gather relics without the need to spend 200 wood on a monastery. Rather than building archery ranges, go for another barracks. Castle Age men-at-arms are excellent at defending against the ram rushes. If your opponent is heavily reliant on knights, build an archery range and produce crossbowmen instead of horse archers. If you manage to successfully defend the aggression, you can transition back into your ideal build. Start producing horse archers, gather relics, and use your extra gold for upgrades. And scout your opponent to counter their army composition with the right military buildings. Now, let's take a look at the current 1v1 map pool. Right away, ban Boulder Bay and Four Lakes. RUS is not a good water sieve, as you won't get any bounty from fishing. For the rest of the maps, RUS is viable on nearly all of them. Let's go through each. Carmel is excellent for RUS. There are lots of deer close to each base, making it harder for the enemy to deny them. The map features small gold veins, forcing your opponent to go out for gold earlier, while you can delay gold mining until late Castle Age. Dry Arabia is a great map for RUS. It's open, allowing horse archers to kite more easily and raid enemy bases. Cavalry in general performs well here. Enlightened Horizon is playable but risky. Watch for Dark Age plays aimed at capturing the wolves' dens. RUS can try going Dark Age spears, but it's not ideal. You could ignore the dens, but if your opponent goes for them, you will be at an early disadvantage. Also, aside from the first deer pack, the rest are very far away from your TC, a downside for RUS. I'm working on a build that could improve RUS viability here, but for this build, it is not the best. One of the best RUS maps is Gorge. A safe woodline behind your base makes you nearly untouchable in feudal, and the openness of the map favors horse archers. High View is excellent for RUS. There is a high amount of wood and stealth forests. That means your hunting cabins will generate a lot of passive gold. It's also a very open map, and your opponent will need scouts or towers for vision. Lipany is a decent map for RUS. Sometimes it spawns with mountains and woodlands that make it easier to wall, which is great for RUS. However, the more closed-off layout reduces the horse archer's effectiveness a bit, but it's still a solid map. Relic River is playable, but be aware your opponent might go for fishing, which could give them an early eco advantage. Sunken Lands is fantastic for RUS. It's open, and the deer packs spawn very close to your TC. You can push them into TC range with your scouts, and then roam the map to steal your opponent's deer. Like Carmel, it also features small golds, giving you a long-term advantage. Now, let's analyze 3 games I played at Conqueror 2 level. The first game is against a French opponent. Because he is French, he will not let me get the deer as easily as I portrayed in the ideal setup. So my plan here is to get a barracks as soon as I can after researching professional scouts, and to go only for 5 scouts instead of 7, so I can get units out faster. So here, my opponent's scout is going that way. So now I know I need to send my second scout this way, so I can prevent him from getting any more sheep. If you're playing against RUS, it is very important you hide your scout from the enemy scout, so he does not know where you're going and can't take your sheep. As you can see, now I've cut off my opponent from getting sheep on his own side of the map, and he ends up finding almost nothing compared to me. Now, with my forward scout, I see that he went for a mill. This means he's going for professional scouts as well. For this reason, I use my forward scout to kill all the deer on his side of the map, which will annoy him a little bit when trying to get deer. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you constantly keep looking at your forward scout. Now, the first enemy unit finally arrives at my first deer pack. For some reason, he made a horseman first. This is completely fine for me, as horsemen deal very little damage to scouts, so I will still go for this deer when the upgrade completes. Shortly after, my spearmen start to come out and help defend my deer. We both got distracted at one point trying to micro in 2 different places, and I lost 2 scouts for a knight, which in my opinion is a very good trade. Now, here's why I think horsemen are really bad to counter professional scouts. It takes too long to kill a single scout. Granted, I still lose it, but he had to dive my TC to do it. Now, I'm headed to Castle Age with the High Trade House, as I did not see many units from him, so I know I'm not getting rushed in any way. He's also going up with the Guild Hall. From this point on, I can use my leftover spears to harass his own professional scouts, and I start sending horse archers that way while I gather relics in the back. Notice I also start making men-at-arms to tank his archers. Since I already had a barracks from feudal age, now I use the horse archers to kill his knights and keep them away from his archers. Because I had way better traits than him, his army is really small compared to mine, and he's not able to protect his gold mine. By this point, I've already gathered 3 relics, I'm way ahead in economy and in army, and my opponent decides to call it right there. The second game is against an HRE player. Here, the plan is to get castle as fast as possible to try and deny him from getting any relics. Once again, I saw my opponent's scout here, so I sent my second scout to get all the sheep on the other side of the map. After some time, I saw that he went for a minework instead of a chapel. This tells me he might go for a lot of aggression in feudal instead of trying to rush castle. However, because I saw he was producing horsemen, I feel confident that I can get to castle without producing units. As you can see, he needs 3 horsemen just to deny a couple of deer, and I still managed to get 3 of those safely under my TC, plus a few more from my other scouts. Now, I lost 2 scouts, but I will reach castle age much earlier than my opponent, and I already got enough deer to produce units and push his army back to get the rest of the deer. Even though my opponent has horsemen, I still go for horse archers, as they have incredibly high base damage and can still destroy feudal age horsemen, if microed correctly. Now, he's trying to take the deer he denied in feudal age, but because I now have horse archers, he needs to go back. We can see that he tried investing more into feudal age to contest my deer packs here and my horse archers. This was a terrible mistake in my opinion, as he managed to get a lot of my horse archers, but in return he is losing all the relics on the map. Now I'm going for my own stables to help my horse archers tank the horsemen that are becoming a problem, and because my opponent decided to invest in feudal age and didn't do any real damage, by the time he gets to castle I already have a really big mass of horse archers and knights with upgrades from the blacksmith, and it's really easy for me to just march into his base and get the win. Finally, I wanted to show you this game against an Ottoman player because it is a game where I committed a lot of mistakes. I will illustrate what those mistakes were, and hopefully you can avoid them in your own games. First, I immediately killed the deer closest to his TC, because I know Ottoman players very commonly go for early spearmen. This will prevent his spearmen from pushing the deer into his TC. Meanwhile, I push my own deer under my TC and proceed with my build as normal. Because I saw he was building a lot of spears, I decided to build an archery range, just to build 2 or 3 archers to protect my scouts, which are inevitably going to get attacked by his spears. This is good because I will need an archery range anyways, in Castle Age, to get my first few horse archers. Here, my archers get caught in the middle of the map by a single Sipahi, so I send them the other way to make sure my scouts carrying deer get back safely. Now, once I get to the Castle Age, I make my first mistake. I am going against an Ottoman player. Sipahis and Janissaries hard counter horse archers, so I should have probably gone for a few knights to get the relics and then switched to infantry. As you can see, my horse archers are taking ages to kill a few Sipahi, and for this reason my opponent was able to get 4 relics in total, up against only 1 for me. Anyhow, now I'm looking to deny my opponent's food, so first I send my units to his top side, where I start taking his deer. And finally, I get some damage done with my horse archers at his gold. As you can see in the income, he's starting to run out of food, and most of his gold income is coming from the relics he got. Another mistake here is that I am taking too long to do something with my units. Yes, I am taking map control, but my units are just sitting there protecting the big gold vein. Getting the center of the map and denying big gold veins is good, but if you give Ottomans too much space, they will produce an army way too hard to kill, even if their economy is bad because they produce too many free units. Now I know his only food left is on the south side of his base, so I start torching his walls. Let's pause here for a second and take a look at my army composition. I am up against an Ottoman that's spamming Sipahis, Janissaries and siege, and enveloping horsemen, knights and horse archers. You can see why this is a terrible mistake from me. Even though I'm beating my opponent in economy, his army should completely destroy mine. Once I get destroyed here, I decided to switch to infantry and use my leftover cavalry to keep raiding. Maintaining him occupied until I get control of the center of the map is my best bet. Here's where I'm currently committing another mistake. If your opponent has this much siege and Janissaries to defend it, you will never beat his army without your own siege. And what do? I make a Spasskaya tower in the middle and make absolutely no siege to defend it. He pushes onto my Spasskaya tower and completely destroys my whole army. He's not entirely able to kill my Spasskaya tower, which gives me some time to recover. By this time, surely I should know I need siege to fight his army, but instead, I build a bunch of archery ranges. My plan was to switch to Streltsy, plus some infantry to tank, and horsemen to get his siege. Clearly this does not work, and I finally come to realize I need to go back to my base and rethink my life choices. It takes a while to clear my buildings in the middle, so that gives me time to build up my army again. And his economy is still pretty bad compared to mine, as he is investing a lot into Castle Age. He plans to win with a frontal push, but because I never stopped raiding, winning here is his only chance. When defending like this, do not engage until the last second. I wait until I'm maxed at 200 pop and then I go for it. I even pulled my villagers to tank some of the siege, and it cost me my whole Imperial army, but I managed to finally break the Ottoman's army. I learned from this game that you should not ignore siege in Castle Age. If your opponent is also massing it, cavalry, especially against the Ottoman, is not enough. And that's pretty much it. If you watched until this point, thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like as well. It helps out a lot. I know this build is probably already out there, but RUS is my favorite civilization. I've been playing it since I started in AoE 4, so I definitely needed to make a video about it. For my next videos I will explore some wacky of meta but strong and fun builds for team games, so stay tuned for that. And with that, I hope you have a great day and see you in the next one.